The stars had never looked so cold to King Vorath. He stood alone on the observation deck of his royal flagship, his 4 eyes fixed on the endless darkness beyond the glass. Somewhere out there, in the vast emptiness between worlds, his daughter was lost. Perhaps she was already dead. He did not know. He could not know. And that was the worst part of all. 12 cycles had passed since Princess Alindra vanished. 12 cycles of searching. 12 cycles of hoping. 12 cycles of slowly dying inside while pretending to be strong for his empire. King Vorath was the ruler of 7,000 worlds. His fleets could destroy entire star systems. His word was law across half the galaxy. But none of that power meant anything now. He could not find one small ship. He could not save one young woman. He could not bring his daughter home. The door behind him opened with a soft sound. He did not turn around. He already knew who it was. General Szeth walked forward and knelt on the cold metal floor. The general was a massive creature, even by Kyrilian standards. His gray skin was covered in battle scars. His eyes held the weight of 1,000 wars. But when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "My king, I bring news." Vorath kept his eyes on the stars. "Tell me, our surveillance probes have found something. Near the edge of human-controlled space, there is debris floating in orbit around one of their worlds. The energy signature matches the princess's vessel." For a moment, Vorath's heart stopped beating. Then they started again, faster than before. "And Alindra? Did they find her body?" "No, my lord. No remains were discovered. But the damage to the ship was severe. It appears she crashed on the planet below." Vorath finally turned around. "Which planet?" "The humans call it Earth. It is their home world. Their original planet. Earth." Vorath had heard reports about it. A small blue world covered mostly in water. The birthplace of a species that should not exist. A species that frightened his advisors more than any other in the galaxy. Humans. If she survived the crash, Vorath said slowly, she would be alone among them. Among primitives. Among violent, unpredictable creatures who cannot even control their own wars. General Szeth nodded. "That is correct, my lord. The chances of survival are very small. Human society is chaotic. They lack proper structure. They fight each other constantly. And their atmosphere, while breathable for Kyrilians, is harsh. The temperatures vary wildly. The radiation from their sun is strong." Vorath walked past the general and stood before the great window that showed the main bridge below. Thousands of Kyrilian soldiers moved about their duties, unaware that their king was watching them. Unaware that their princess might be dead. "What do we know about humans?" Vorath asked. "Truly no, not what we assume." Szeth stood up and joined him at the window. "They are young, my lord. Their species is only a few 100,000 years old. They discovered space travel less than one of their centuries ago. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. They still burn chemical fuels. They still fight with simple projectile weapons. And yet my advisors fear them. Yes, my lord. They fear what humans might become. Not what they are now, but what they could be in 1,000 years. In 10,000 years." Szeth paused. "Humans grow faster than any species we have ever observed. They adapt. They change. They learn from their mistakes and then make new mistakes that teach them even more." Vorath closed his eyes. He remembered when Alindra was small. She used to sit on his lap in the throne room, asking endless questions about the stars and the worlds that circled them. She wanted to know everything. She wanted to meet every species. She wanted to understand the galaxy in ways her father never had. When she grew older, she became a diplomat. A bridge between worlds. She believed that the Kyrilian Empire could be more than just conquerors. She believed in peace, in understanding, in connection, and so she had traveled to the edge of human space. Not to spy, not to threaten, just to observe, just to learn. Now she was gone. Send more probes, Vorth commanded. Send ships. Send soldiers if you must. Search every corner of that planet. Find her, Szeth. Find my daughter. The general bowed his head. It will be done, my lord. But I must warn you. If we send ships into human space, we risk detection. They are primitive, but they are not blind. They have satellites. They have telescopes. They watch their skies with fear and hope. I do not care about their detection. I do not care about their fear or their hope. I care about my daughter. Of course, my lord. Szeth turned to leave, but Vorth stopped him with a word. General. Yes, my king? Vorth looked at him with eyes that held centuries of pain. Do you believe she is still alive? Szeth was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke the truth, because he knew his king deserved nothing less. I do not know, my lord. The universe is large and full of dangers. A prince is alone on a hostile world, surrounded by beings who might see her as a threat or a prize. The odds are not good, but there is a chance. There is always a chance, my lord. That is what separates hope from despair. Vorth turned back to the window. Then we will keep hoping. Now go. Find her. Szeth bowed and left the observation deck. The door closed behind him, and once again, King Vorth was alone with the stars. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the day she was born, how small she had been, how fragile. He thought about teaching her to read the star maps, showing her the worlds that would one day be hers to rule. He thought about the last time he saw her, standing at the door of her ship, smiling and waving as she departed for the edge of known space. She had promised to return in 3 cycles. That was almost a year ago by human counting. Now he did not know if she would return at all. King Vorth pressed his hand against the cold glass. Somewhere beyond the darkness, his daughter was waiting. Or she was not. Either way, he would not stop searching. He could not stop, because he was a king, yes. But he was also a father. And fathers do not abandon their children, even when all hope seems lost. He whispered her name into the silence. Alindra. The stars did not answer. They never did. But Vorth kept watching them anyway, waiting for a sign, waiting for a miracle, waiting for his lost princess to find her way home. Alindra remembered the fire. She remembered the sound of metal tearing apart, the scream of alarms, the violent spinning as her ship fell through the atmosphere of an unknown world. She remembered hitting the ground. Then she remembered nothing at all. When she woke up, everything was white. For a moment, she thought she was dead. The Kyrilian priests taught that death was a journey into light, a passage from the darkness of the body into the brightness of the eternal. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps she had finally crossed over. Then she felt pain. Her arms burned. Her head ached. Her whole body felt like it had been crushed and put back together by someone who did not know what they were doing. Dead people do not feel pain, she thought. So I must still be alive. She tried to open her eyes fully. The light was too bright. She closed them again and waited. Slowly, carefully, she tried once more. This time, she could see shapes moving around her. Strange shapes. 2-legged creatures with soft skin and flat faces. They had only 2 eyes each. Their bodies were covered in colorful fabrics. Humans. She was on Earth. She was alive. And she was surrounded by the very beings her father had warned her about. One of the humans moved closer. It was a female. Alindra could tell by the voice. The female spoke slowly, making sounds that Alindra's neural implants struggled to translate. You're awake. That's good. Can you hear me? Do you understand what I'm saying? Alindra tried to speak, but her throat was dry. She coughed instead. The human female brought a container filled with water and held it to Alindra's lips. Here, drink slowly. You've been unconscious for almost 2 weeks. Your body needs time to recover. 2 weeks. Alindra drank the water and felt it cool her burning throat. 2 weeks among humans. How had she survived that long? My name is Claire, the female said. Claire Martinez. You crashed in the mountains about 20 miles from here. Some hikers found you and brought you to our clinic. You were in very bad shape, but we managed to stabilize you. Stabilize. The word sounded clinical, cold, but Claire's voice was warm. Her eyes were kind. She did not look at Alindra with fear or disgust. She looked at her the way a healer looks at a patient. Why? Alindra managed to whisper. Why did you help me? Claire seemed surprised by the question. Because you needed help. What other reason would we need? Over the following days, Alindra learned more about the place where she had landed. She was in a small town in a region called Colorado, high in the mountains of a country called the United States. The clinic was run by Claire and her husband, a man named Ethan. They treated the local people for sickness and injury. They worked long hours. They never turned anyone away. Ethan was tall and thin, with dark hair that was turning gray at the edges. He smiled easily and laughed often. When he learned that Alindra was not human, he did not run away or call for soldiers. He simply sat down beside her bed and said, Well, that explains why you have 4 eyes. I thought maybe it was a birth defect. Alindra did not know how to respond to that. On any Carillion world, such a comment would be considered rude. But Ethan was not being mean. He was trying to make her feel comfortable. He was using humor to break the tension. She had never experienced anything like it. As her body healed, Alindra began to explore the small town. The humans stared at her, of course. She looked different from them. Her skin was a pale blue color. Her eyes were large and golden. But the stares were curious, not hostile. Children pointed and asked questions. Adults nodded politely and went about their business. One day, Claire took her to meet a man named Sam. He lived in a small house at the edge of town and spent his days building things in his garage. When Alindra entered, she saw dozens of artificial limbs hanging from the walls and resting on tables. Sam lost his legs in an accident when he was young, Claire explained. Now he makes prosthetics for other people who have lost limbs. He gives them away for free. Alindra stared at Sam. He was sitting in a wheeled chair, his own artificial legs visible below his shorts. He was working on a small arm designed for a child. Why do you do this? Alindra asked him. Sam looked up and smiled. Because someone helped me once. A stranger, actually. Paid for my first pair of legs when I couldn't afford them. Never asked for anything in return. Just told me to help someone else someday. He shrugged. So that's what I do. I help someone else. But you receive nothing for your work. No payment. No reward. The reward is seeing a kid walk for the first time. Seeing a mother hold her baby with 2 hands instead of 1. That's worth more than money. Alindra did not understand. In the Carillion Empire, everything had a price. Every service required payment. Every gift created a debt. The idea of giving without expecting anything in return was foreign to her. It was almost offensive, and yet, as she watched Sam work on the tiny arm, she felt something strange in her chest. Something warm. Something that might have been admiration. Months passed. Alindra's burns healed, leaving only faint scars. Ethan taught her to speak English properly, without relying on her neural implant. Claire showed her how to cook human food and introduced her to something called music. She heard sounds that made her want to cry, though she did not know why. She met more humans. a teacher named Maria who worked with children who had no parents, a young man named Jake who delivered medicine to elderly people who could not leave their homes, a group of volunteers who spent their weekends cleaning trash from the rivers and forests. None of them asked for anything in return. None of them expected payment or praise. They simply did what they felt was right, because doing right felt good to them. One evening, Alindra sat with Claire on the porch of the clinic, watching the sun set behind the mountains. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors that Alindra had never seen on any Kyrelian world. "Why are your people like this?" she asked. "Why do you help strangers? Why do you give without taking?" Claire thought for a moment. "I don't know if I can explain it properly. It's just who we are, I guess. We know what it feels like to suffer, so we don't want others to suffer. We know what it feels like to be alone, so we reach out to those who are lonely." She looked at Alindra with gentle eyes. "Maybe that's what being human means. Seeing yourself in others and caring about what happens to them." Alindra looked at the sunset and felt the warm evening air on her skin. She had been taught that humans were primitive and dangerous. She had been told they were violent and unpredictable. But in all her months among them, she had seen nothing but kindness, nothing but compassion. Perhaps her teachers had been wrong, or perhaps they had lied. Either way, Alindra knew that something inside her had changed. She had come to Earth as a stranded princess, expecting to find enemies. Instead, she had found friends. She had found teachers. She had found a truth that her empire did not want her to know. Humans were not monsters. They were something far more remarkable. They were beings who chose to be good, even when no one was watching. Even when no reward was promised. Even when the universe gave them every reason to be cruel instead. And that, Alindra realized, was the most powerful thing she had ever seen. The night was quiet when Alindra made her discovery. Everyone in the town was asleep. The mountains stood dark and silent against the star-filled sky. Only Alindra was awake, sitting alone in the small room that Claire and Ethan had given her. Her neural implant had been damaged in the crash, but not destroyed. Over the past few months, it had slowly repaired itself, reconnecting pathways and restoring functions that had been lost. Tonight, for the first time since her arrival on Earth, she was able to access the hidden archives. Every member of the Kyrelian royal family carried classified information in their neural implants. It was a security measure, a way to ensure that important data was never lost, even if physical records were destroyed. Alindra had always known the archive was there, but she had never thought to look at it closely. Now, sitting in the darkness of her small room, she searched for one specific file. Humanity. The file opened instantly. It was huge, much larger than she expected. Thousands of pages of research. Centuries of observation. Detailed analysis of human biology, psychology, culture, and technology. Alindra began to read. At first, the information seemed normal. Basic facts about human anatomy. Descriptions of their major languages. Maps of their political divisions. She had learned most of this during her time on Earth. Then she reached the section labeled Threat Assessment. Her hands began to shake as she read. Humans had been classified as a Category 7 threat. This was the highest classification in the Kyrelian system. It was reserved for species that posed a danger to the entire empire. Species that could not be controlled. Species that must be dealt with before they became too powerful. But why? Humans were so young, so primitive. Their fastest ships could barely reach a fraction of light speed. Their weapons were crude. Their understanding of the universe was limited. She kept reading. The answers were there, hidden in dry academic language and cold statistical analysis. Humans were dangerous because they grew too fast. The report showed charts of technological development across different species. Most civilizations advanced slowly, taking millions of years to go from simple tools to space travel. Chiralians had taken 3 million years. The Veth took nearly 5 million. The Kala were still working on basic electronics after 2 million years of recorded history. Humans had gone from stone axes to nuclear reactors in less than 10,000 years. Thought it was impossible. The mathematics of evolution did not allow for such rapid progress. And yet the evidence was undeniable. Humans had discovered fire, invented writing, built cities, created machines, split the atom, and reached the moon in what amounted to a single heartbeat of cosmic time. The report predicted that if left unchecked, humans would reach Chiralian technological levels within 300 years. Within 500 years, they would surpass them, but the speed of their development was not the only concern. Alendra, read about human cooperation. Unlike most species, humans formed bonds across genetic and cultural lines. They worked together even when there was no biological reason to do so. They sacrificed themselves for strangers. They built alliances with former enemies. They forgave old hatreds and moved forward. The Chiralian analysts did not understand this behavior. They called it irrational. They called it unpredictable. They called it dangerous. One line stood out above all others. Humans display willingness to sacrifice individual survival for collective benefit. This behavior cannot be predicted or controlled. Alendra thought about Sam, building artificial limbs for strangers. She thought about Claire, taking care of a crashed alien without asking questions. She thought about all the humans who had shown her kindness without expecting anything in return. The analysts were right. They could not predict that behavior. But they were wrong about what it meant. It was not dangerous. It was beautiful. She kept reading. The final section of the report was labeled Recommended Actions. Her blood turned cold as she absorbed the words. The Chiralian High Council had met 200 years before Alendra was born. They had discussed the human problem at length. Invasion was considered but rejected. Humans bred too quickly. They adapted too fast. A direct war would be costly and potentially unwinnable. Instead, the Council had chosen a different approach. Covert operations, subtle manipulation, economic destabilization, social engineering. For 2 centuries, the Chiralian Empire had been quietly working to slow human progress. They had infiltrated human governments. They had encouraged conflicts. They had suppressed certain technologies while promoting others. They had done everything possible to keep humanity weak and divided, and it was working. The report noted with satisfaction that human space exploration had stalled since the late 20th century. Internal conflicts continued to drain their resources. Climate instability threatened their civilization. All according to plan. Alendra closed the file and sat in the darkness, her mind spinning. Her father knew. The king of the Chiralian Empire, the man who had held her as a child and promised to protect her, knew about this. He had approved it. He had continued the policies of his predecessors. He had participated in the slow destruction of an innocent species. She thought about Claire and Ethan and Sam. She thought about Maria the teacher and Jake the delivery boy. She thought about all the humans who had shown her what kindness really meant. They had no idea. They did not know that a vast empire was working against them. They did not know that their struggles were not accidental, that their divisions were being encouraged, that their progress was being deliberately slowed. They just kept trying. They kept helping each other. They kept hoping for a better future. And suddenly, Alendra understood why the Chiralians feared humans so much. It was not their technology. It was not their weapons. It was not their numbers. It was their spirit. Humans could not be broken. No matter how many obstacles were placed in their path, they kept moving forward. No matter how many times they were knocked down, they got back up. No matter how much darkness surrounded them, they kept reaching for the light. That was what the Empire truly feared. Not what humans could do, but who they were. A species that chose hope over despair. A species that chose cooperation over isolation. A species that chose love over hatred, even when love was harder. Alendra sat alone in the darkness and made a decision. She could not change the past. She could not undo 2 centuries of covert manipulation. But she could change the future. She was a princess of the Kyrelian Empire. One day, if she returned home, she might become queen. And when that day came, she would use her power to end this hidden war. She would reveal the truth to her people. She would show them what humans really were. Not a threat to be suppressed. A friend waiting to be made. She looked out the window at the dark mountains and the bright stars above them. Somewhere out there, her father was searching for her. He believed she was lost. He believed she was in danger. He had no idea that his daughter had found something far more valuable than safety. She had found the truth, and the truth would set both their peoples free. The rescue ship arrived on a cold December morning. Alendra stood outside the clinic, wrapped in a thick coat that Claire had given her. Snow covered the ground in a soft white blanket. The air was so cold that her breath formed small clouds in front of her face. Around her, the humans of the town had gathered to watch. They had seen the ship appear in the sky an hour earlier. A massive vessel, sleek and silver, moving through the clouds like a creature from another world. Which, of course, it was. The humans had watched in silence as it descended toward the mountains. Some were afraid. Some were excited. Most were simply curious. Now the ship hovered above the town square, its engines humming with a sound that humans had never heard before. A door opened in its side, and a ramp extended down to the snowy ground. General Zeth walked down the ramp. He was enormous, even larger than Alendra remembered. His gray skin seemed to absorb the morning light. His armor was polished and bright. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd of humans with a mixture of caution and contempt. Behind him came a dozen Kyrelian soldiers, each one armed with weapons that could level buildings. The humans stepped back, fear finally showing on their faces. Alendra moved forward, placing herself between her people and the crowd. "General Zeth," she said, "I am glad to see you." The general's eyes widened. For a moment, his stern face softened. "Princess Alendra, Your Highness, your father has been searching for you for nearly 2 years. The entire empire rejoices at your survival." "I am sure it does." Alendra's voice was calm, controlled. "How did you find me?" "Our probes finally detected your neural implant signal 3 days ago. We came as quickly as we could." Zeth looked around at the snow-covered town, at the small wooden buildings and the primitive vehicles parked along the streets. "I cannot imagine what you have endured living among these creatures. But your ordeal is over now. We will take you home." Alendra did not move. "These creatures saved my life, General. They found me in the mountains after my ship crashed. They healed my wounds. They gave me food and shelter. They treated me with kindness." Zeth frowned. "That is unexpected. Our reports indicate that humans are violent and unpredictable. We assumed they would treat you as a threat or a prisoner. Your reports are wrong." Alendra turned to look at the crowd of humans. Claire was standing at the front, her face pale but determined. Ethan stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Sam was there in his wheeled chair, watching with wide eyes. "These are good people, General. Better than many Kyrelians I have known." Zeth clearly did not believe her, but he was smart enough not to argue with a princess in front of witnesses. "We can discuss this on the journey home, Your Highness. Your father is waiting." Alendra took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading. The moment when she would have to leave behind the friends who had become her family. "Before I go," she said, "I want something from you." Zeth raised an eyebrow. "Name it, princess. These humans saved my life. I want safe passage guaranteed for this entire region. No Kyrelian ships. No surveillance. No interference of any kind. Swear it on my father's name." The general hesitated. Such a promise was unusual. The Kyrelian Empire did not make deals with primitive species. But Alindra was the king's daughter. Her wishes carried weight. "It will be done," Zeth said finally. "I will issue the orders personally. This region will be protected." Alindra nodded. It was not enough. She knew it was not enough. But it was something. A small victory in a much larger war. She turned to face Claire. The human woman was crying. Tears streamed down her face, leaving wet trails on her cheeks. But she was also smiling. "I knew this day would come," Claire said. "I knew someone would come looking for you eventually. You're too important to stay hidden forever." Alindra felt her own eyes begin to water. Kyrelians rarely cried. It was considered a sign of weakness. But at this moment, she did not care about weakness or strength. She only cared about the woman who had taken in a stranger and treated her like a daughter. "You changed my life," Alindra said. "You and Ethan and Sam and everyone in this town. I came here expecting to find enemies. Instead, I found the kindest beings I have ever known." Claire stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Alindra. The princess stiffened at first. Physical affection was rare among Kyrelians. But then she relaxed and returned the embrace. "Don't forget us," Claire whispered. "Never," Alindra promised. "I will never forget. And I will come back someday. When things are different. When the galaxy is ready." She released Claire and stepped back. Ethan gave her a small wave. Sam nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. The rest of the townspeople watched in silence. Alindra walked toward the ramp of the rescue ship. General Zeth and his soldiers formed an escort around her. As she climbed the ramp, she looked back one last time. The humans stood in the snow, small and fragile-looking compared to the massive Kyrelian vessel. But Alindra knew that looks were deceiving. These creatures were stronger than any army. Their strength came from something that could not be measured by weapons or technology. Their strength came from their hearts. The door closed behind her, and the ship began to rise. Through the window, Alindra watched the town grow smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny spot on the white landscape. Then the cloud swallowed it completely, and there was nothing left to see. She stood alone in the observation room as the ship climbed through the atmosphere and entered the darkness of space. Stars appeared around her, cold and distant. The same stars she had watched from her father's flagship so long ago, but everything was different now. She activated her personal recorder and began to compile her notes. Every observation, every conversation, every moment of kindness she had witnessed. She would create a complete record of her time among humans. A document that could not be ignored or dismissed. Her father believed that humans were dangerous. He believed they must be controlled. He believed the covert operations were necessary for the safety of the Empire. Alindra would show him that he was wrong. She would show him that humans were not a threat to be feared. They were an opportunity to be embraced. A chance to build something new in the galaxy. A chance to move beyond conquest and control toward something better. Partnership, cooperation, friendship. The ship jumped into faster than light travel, and the stars stretched into long lines of light. Alindra watched them and thought about the future. It would not be easy. Her father was stubborn. The High Council was powerful. Centuries of policy could not be changed overnight. But she was a princess. One day, she would be queen. And when that day came, She would remember Claire and Ethan and Sam. She would remember the town in the mountains, covered in snow. She would remember what humans had taught her about kindness and compassion and the true meaning of strength. And she would change everything. The galaxy did not know it yet. But a revolution had begun in the heart of a young princess, sparked by a glass of water offered to a wounded stranger. That was the power of human kindness. It traveled further than any ship. It lasted longer than any empire. And it was about to shake the very foundations of Kyrelian civilization. The royal court fell silent as Princess Alindra walked through the great doors. She had been gone for 2 years. 2 years of searching. 2 years of mourning. 2 years of the king refusing to accept that his daughter might be dead. Now she stood in the doorway of the throne room, alive and whole. The courtiers stared. The guards lowered their weapons in surprise. Even the ancient advisors, who had seen many strange things in their long lives, looked at her with wide eyes. Alindra walked forward. Her footsteps echoed on the polished stone floor. She wore human clothing beneath her Kyrelian ceremonial robes. A soft sweater that Claire had knitted for her. Jeans that Ethan had bought at a store in town. Small reminders of the world she had left behind. King Voreth descended from his throne. His movements were slow, uncertain. He looked older than Alindra remembered. His face was lined with worry. His shoulders seemed to carry a heavy weight. When he reached her, he stopped. For a moment, he was not a king. He was just a father looking at his child. "Alindra," he whispered. "My daughter." She allowed him to embrace her. She felt his arms wrap around her, felt his body shake with emotion. She remembered being a child, sitting on his lap, listening to him tell stories about the stars. She remembered thinking that her father was the strongest being in the universe. Now she knew better. "I thought you were dead," Voreth said, his voice breaking. "I thought I had lost you forever." "I nearly died," Alindra replied. "My ship crashed on a planet called Earth. I was badly injured. I would have died in those mountains if someone had not found me." Voreth pulled back and looked at her face. "Someone saved you? Who?" "Humans." The word fell into the silence like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples spread across the court. Courtiers exchanged worried glances. Advisors leaned forward, their expressions sharp and calculating. "We will discuss this privately," Voreth said, his voice becoming the voice of a king again. "Come with me to my chambers." "No." The word was simple, quiet, but it stopped Voreth in his tracks. "What did you say?" "I said no, father. We will discuss this here, in front of everyone." Alindra looked around the throne room, meeting the eyes of every courtier, every advisor, every guard. "What I have to say concerns the entire empire. They deserve to hear it." Voreth's face hardened. "Alindra, this is not the time. It is exactly the time." She stepped away from her father and turned to face the assembled court. "I have accessed the Imperial archives. I know what the High Council decided 2 centuries ago. I know about the covert operations against humanity. I know what we have been doing to them." The silence in the throne room became absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. "I lived among humans for almost 2 years," Alindra continued. "Not as a princess, but as a stranger in need. I crashed on their world. I was injured and alone. They owed me nothing. They had every reason to fear me. Instead, they healed me. They fed me. They gave me a home. They treated me as one of their own." She reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with a soft blue light. "This contains my complete record of human society. Their art, their music, their philosophy, their history, their capacity for both destruction and redemption." She held the crystal up so everyone could see it. "I have seen what humans really are. Not the monsters described in our reports. Not the primitives we have been told to fear. Something else entirely. Voreth stepped forward. Alandra, enough. You do not understand the situation. Humans are dangerous. The projections are clear. If we do not act now, they will grow beyond our ability to control them. That is exactly my point, Father. Alindra turned to face him. You cannot control them. No one can. Within 300 years, they will reach our technological level. Within 500, they will surpass it. You can delay them. You can slow their progress. But you cannot stop them. They are too adaptable, too determined, too stubborn. Then, you understand why we must continue the operations. No, I understand why we must stop them. Alindra took a deep breath. I have seen the future that awaits us if we continue on this path. One day, the humans will discover what we have done. They will learn about the covert manipulations, the suppression, the interference in their development. And when that day comes, they will not forgive us. She looked around the court again. You fear what humans might do if they become powerful. But imagine what they will do if they become powerful and angry. Imagine an entire species united by rage, driven by a desire for justice against the empire that tried to destroy them. That is the future we are creating with these policies. Voreth shook his head. You speak of possibilities, not certainties. We cannot change our entire strategy based on what might happen. Then let me speak of certainties. Alendra placed the crystal on the floor before the throne. A human woman named Claire found me dying in the mountains. She could have left me there. She could have turned me over to her government. She could have demanded payment or rewards. Instead, she carried me to her clinic and spent weeks healing my wounds. When I asked her why, she said something I will never forget. The court waited. She said, because you needed help. That is reason enough. Alindra let the words hang in the air. That is what humans are, Father. Not monsters. Not threats. Beings who help others simply because help is needed. Beings who choose kindness over cruelty. Beings who see a stranger in pain and reach out instead of turning away. She pointed at the crystal on the floor. You have two choices. You can continue the suppression and face a war you cannot win when humans finally discover the truth. Or you can reach out now while there is still time. Offer them something no empire has ever offered a younger species. Respect, partnership, equality. General Zeth stepped forward from his position near the door. Your Highness, with respect, what you are proposing is unprecedented. We cannot simply abandon centuries of policy based on the kindness of a few individuals. A few individuals? Alendra laughed, but there was no humor in it. I lived among them for 2 years, General. I did not meet a few kind individuals. I met a kind species. Teachers who work for almost nothing because they love children. Doctors who treat patients who cannot pay. Neighbors who help each other through hard times. Strangers who stop to assist people they will never see again. She turned back to her father. This is not weakness, Father. This is strength. The strength to care about others, even when you gain nothing from it. The strength to choose compassion over selfishness. Humans have something that we have lost. Something that we forgot long ago when we became an empire of conquest and control. Voreth looked at the crystal on the floor. He looked at his daughter. He looked at the assembled court, at the advisors and generals and ministers who had guided his empire for decades. Then he bent down and picked up the crystal. Tell me about them, he said quietly. Tell me everything. And so Princess Alindra began to speak. She spoke for hours. She told them about Claire and Ethan and Sam. She told them about the town in the mountains, about the snow and the sunset and the music that made her cry. She told them about human history, about their wars and their peace, about their failures and their triumphs. She told them about a species that kept getting knocked down and kept getting back up. When she finished, the court was silent. Advisors wiped their eyes. Generals looked at the floor. Even Varth seemed changed, his face softer than it had been in years. "I do not know if I can change the Empire," he said finally. "I do not know if I can undo 2 centuries of policy. But I can begin. I can take the first steps. And perhaps in time, we can build something new." He held up the crystal. "We will study this. We will learn from it. And we will find a way to reach out to humanity. Not as masters, but as equals." Alindra felt tears running down her face. She did not try to hide them. The throne had been shaken. The Empire had been changed. And it had all started with a glass of water, offered by a human woman to a wounded stranger in the mountains of Colorado. That was the secret that would transform the galaxy. Kindness, freely given, was more powerful than any fleet, more enduring than any empire, more unstoppable than any weapon. And humanity had mastered it long before they ever reached the stars.